And welcome to Harlem Sculpture Gardens. And we're back in the studio, and we have with us artist Debra Swank. So, Deborah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Savannah.
Yes, and she and I have worked together on collaborative dance and sound with digital. And so she's about to have some of her sound art a part of Harlem Sculpture Gardens. So, Deborah, why don't you tell us how did you begin your journey with sound art?
Well, actually, I come from a family of musicians, so that helps a lot. My father
Yes.
was actually a composer, wrote chamber music,
Mm.
and studied with Henry Cowell, who was John Cage's collaborator and mentor at Columbia.
Oh, wow.
And he had 6 degrees in music and worked with people from the New York Philharmonic. So I played instruments, and I later got more line with John Cage, I feel,
Mm-hmm.
because he was a visual and sound artist.
Okay.
So that's kind of what influenced me in addition to my father. And then I just started making a lot of sound installations or did installation with sound.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been a key feature of my work.
Now I'm curious. What instruments did you play?
I played the violin. I was first
Ah.
violinist and chairmaster,
Oh, my God.
and I was in the choir.
Okay.
But even when I was like about 10 years old, my house, we had pianos, we had violins, violas. My father taught music. He taught music in college, and we always had instruments all over the house. And
Okay.
I once had a friend who missed my house because there was no sound coming out from it. She drove right past it because we
Ah.
all like listened to music, played music. My father had concerts at Carnegie Recital Hall. He
Mm-hmm.
worked. He had he worked with a music group that was associated with Stanley Drucker, who was first clarinetist for the New York Philharmonic for 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
Stanley's wife Naomi had a chamber music group on Long Island, so my father's music was played very frequently by them. And
Mm-hmm.
it was great
Mm-hmm.
because, it wasn't like growing up in the suburbs where, your father does this. And
Mm-hmm.
it was just, seeing my father do creative things and seeing how he balanced family and creativity. And I just thought that's fabulous. Write
Mm-hmm.
music, go into the city, see a bunch of, well-known string quartet or other players, Winwood players, play his music. It was just very satisfying.
See, people don't understand. One of the things I like about New York, which
Yeah,
is kind of disappearing, it was the fact that we're all on top of each other.
yeah,
And because we were on top of each other, you got to hear a variety of sounds. So it could be, because it happened to me, you could hear somebody singing, whether it was church music or operatic, and then you could hear somebody playing trumpet over here, or you can listen to someone playing piano over there. By being on top of each other, it made the experience of being in a city much more rich. And so hearing you talk about that just reminded me of that we should try to encourage more music in our lives in the city.
we should. We should. I know that my son went to Bronx Science, and I
Hmm.
remember one teacher asked the class who had been to a concert
Hmm.
or to a museum in the prior month, and he was the only kid who raised his hand. This is Bronx Science, so
Hmm.
it's just very sobering because there is nothing like, and even jazz music. I also worked for Polygram Records,
Oh, wow.
and I ran the training department there. Um, and I used to get to go to a lot of concerts, and they had Verve, Blue Note, and Def Jam,
Mm.
Motown. They had a
Okay.
lot of label Island Records, so I got to go to a lot of concerts. But just that exposure
Mhm.
of hearing different kinds, and I would go to any type of music, and I love jazz and
Mhm.
blues and
Mhm.
world music
Yeah.
and any kind of music. Just as long as it's good and it's authentic, that's what's to me is what's great about music. It could be just ordinary popular music, and it could be great.
Right.
It could be a person like Leonard Cohen who doesn't have a great voice, But if you listen to a
But
lot
I
of
like
his
his music. I do like
his
his music.
arrangements are phenomenal.
That
It's like
raspy
poetry.
voice.
It's like poetry, but the other musicians that complement him, the arrangements are, to me, what is so fascinating to listen to. They're brilliant. They're brilliantly done. And just the way he juxtaposes his voice against the other musicians and the instrumentation, it's just kind of fascinating, I think.
Even Laurie Anderson. I
Yeah.
remember when she did that whole concert for dogs. It was it was quite interesting.
I haven't seen that. I'll have to look that up.
They did it in Times Square. Times Square
Oh my
invited me.
God.
I said, I will only show up if you send me a car because it's too cold outside.
Wow.
But yeah, okay. So this is how you began. You grew up with all of this. And
Yeah.
so tell us, what does your practice mean for you? Your sound art practice.
I like to collaborate. I like to collaborate with different people, people I haven't worked with before, because then I learn all about what they do and what their interests are and what their passions are. And it's exciting because sometimes I get to work with people who normally wouldn't collaborate with an artist, and they get very enthusiastic. And that's, to me, goes back to what we were talking about, is expanding the knowledge of the general population, not just kids, but even adults who may not appreciate the arts. This is how we broaden our audiences. And a lot of them will, I'm collaborating with somebody now who's head of the Artificial Intelligence and Data Institute at the University of Buffalo, and I'm going to be doing a plant project, a flower room, which is going to be similar to my cloud mapping project that I did at the Quintai Museum last year.
Okay.
Where I was invited by the curator of the Venice Biennale, of the Chinese Pavilion. His name is, I think his name is Ki Zahaji, and he's actually a dean in Beijing, and the Quintai Museum is absolutely beautiful, but they made everything from scratch, and I sent them diagrams, and they just constructed it. It was just very surreal because it was all digital. They fabricated a 17-foot room for me.
Wow.
It was supposed to be like a globe, simulated a globe, and I had 5-channel projection screen.
Wow.
With a ceiling. I had a ceiling projection screen, and with beanbag seating. So it was an entire room that was enclosed. It was very cool, and I did 5 channels of synchronized sound, and that's I think that's the piece that I gave you for this exhibit, is one of the tracks from that installation.
Whew. Now, we're going to show some images of a collaboration you did several years ago. It was with my organization. It was with Pratt. It was with independent dancers, animal patenting. And that was quite an impressive kind of installation that we did under the 12th Avenue Viaduct, where the old grocery store was there, Fairways, and they allowed us to put the white fabric on the wall so we would have that to bounce off, so we would have digital projections of these images that we're showing right now. And the sound, the music, the dancing, it was quite impressive. Gail Brewer still remembers that performance that we all collaborated on. How did you feel about that?
Oh, it was fabulous, and thank you for working with me. It was just a wonderful experience, and I still go back to that. I still, reference that. I actually had an exhibit relating to that at the University of Wisconsin in 2021, and they actually used one of my animal patterns for a cover of a publication called Becoming Feral. But it's just something I continue to work on, and it was just very satisfying when I said to you that I wanted to use dancers, and you were like, I know dancers. I know, come here, I know dancers. And it's just amazing collaborating with a different bunch of people and having everything come together, and it really held up, I thought. And it's very hard to do public art like that.
Yes.
Because I purposely used chimes. I had done work with chimes at Banff Center for the Arts and under a co-production grant in 2005. And so this was kind of some work that I had done in a recording studio. And I actually went on a plane with a suitcase full of chimes, and
Really?
that's all that was in the suitcase. I thought security's gonna stop me like this, something weird with this person, and I actually had them measure an overhead compartment. I think it was American Airlines, because I had one set of chimes that was just oversized, but it was like the exact size of the overhead bin, and they let me carry it, and I got through customs, and everything was great. No problems with the chimes, but my son had a pair of safety scissors, so they stopped us for that. They're like, "Oh, you can't take this." I'm like, "Fine," as long as I got on with the chimes. But I thought chimes would stand up because you have church bells, and that kind of cuts through the city noises. So going back to what you were saying about the cacophony of the sounds of the city, I knew that the chimes, if I work with chimes, they would stand up.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be absorbed by the surrounding sound. So that I thought was very effective, and the lighting and the support from Matt and the digital team from Pratt, and your help, and the dancers. I just think everything kind of came together. It worked, and I thought people enjoyed doing it.
Oh, no, they did. They did. I think they really did.
Yeah.
And we were kind of like a little rogue, too, because we were practicing underneath, and the cops are looking, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And we're trying to explain it to them, and they were like, "We don't get this. We don't understand it." But tell us about cloud mapping, because that's a more recent work that you've been developing.
Yeah. Oh, I just wanted to say one thing about the animal patterning project, and that was just the idea of returning the animals to the environment they once had inhabited, because 200 years ago they were animals, and actually was inspired by photographing taxidermized animals from the American Museum of Natural History and animating them and projecting them onto dances with motion tracking. So it was kind of, there was that layer too.
Yes. We were dealing with a lot of that, and the jumpsuits that they had to wear, and which one was the right one, so the projection would come onto. I remember we used painters, jumpsuits in order to make it all work and to offer the dancers a lot of flexibility in their movements.
Yeah.
So, it takes a lot to pull these
It's a lot.
productions
It's a
off.
lot. And it could not work. And it could not work. You got to have the best intentions, and things don't. The scale doesn't look right. The lighting doesn't look right. The sound doesn't look right. Things don't gel together.
And we use drones too.
Yeah.
We had used drones as well.
No, that was I was telling somebody the other day, because they were telling me, "Oh, you should use drones." I said, "Well, I did. I did it 10 years before this other person." I think there was somebody, Drift. Drift was using drones.
Okay.
Didn't have the budget they had.
Right.
But still, we used technology, and we did it before they did.
Yes.
So.
And so tell us about cloud mapping, which is another work that you're developing.
Cloud mapping project I showed at the Quintai Museum in China in 2023, and I was invited to participate in a Wuhan Biennale. And actually, Wuhan is actually there's a lot of universities there. It's a university town. Somebody told me it's like Barcelona, which is interesting. So they kind of wanted to revitalize the area. So they had this beautiful museum. It's like the Guggenheim Bilbao. It's that beautiful. Okay. If you look it up on the internet, it's won design awards. It looks organic. It looks like it's coming out of the ground. It's gorgeous. And they just said, "We'll do whatever you want." Because at first I thought, I said I want to do a 5-channel video installation, and I want to have a constructed room that reminds one of a globe. Like it's supposed to be like a world globe. So I have like satellite imagery coming from all directions, like north, south, east, and west.
Okay.
And so each wall kind of represents a different direction. And it has to do with surveillance and cloud computing and climate change. And it's just this idea of what we do cumulatively to the environment, and this has city soundscapes, different cities, like NASA-generated images. So it kind of gives you a macro and micro
Mhm.
view of what is going on with the climate, but just looking at the clouds and not determining whether this is toxic or this is good, or what was a cloud in art, what do we think a cloud is in computing. And Bitcoin creates a lot of energy, which creates problems with climate change. There's a
Mhm.
lot of things, activities that we do that we don't think of that cumulatively add up to very bad things. So this was a kind of way to kind of approach it. But I was surprised that they allowed me to do that because it did have to do with surveillance. But
I was going to say that's that's a sticky subject for the Chinese.
right,
Yeah.
right. But it wasn't it wasn't kind of like telling people what to think.
Right.
It was just very generalized because it just had to do with the idea that we become so dependent on our devices that we can't even observe things anymore. And I originally did this project at the Para Museum in Istanbul with
Mhm.
MIT Press. So it was published by MIT Press in 2017.
Mhm.
But I wasn't able to realize it, the scale I wanted until we did the China installation.
Okay.
So the room was like about 17 feet. It was huge.
Ooh.
They built me like a whole room I had ceiling projections, wall-to-ceiling projections, and beanbag seating. It was very cool. And so I didn't go because this was right when they had just opened up China. China had been closed, and they had just
Mhm.
opened up like in the middle or the end of March of 2023,
Mhm.
and the show was only up until May 2023. And they told me I had to quarantine in Shanghai, and I
Ooh,
had to
wow.
quarantine for like 7 days in Shanghai and 5 days in Wuhan. And I just thought, this is just too much. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to see my exhibit if I'm
Right.
there the day
Right.
the museum is open,
Yeah.
and I have to go back to work. I do have a job. I'm a researcher for a university, for SUNY. And I just thought, well, I'll have to pass on this. But they did send me some videos,
Okay.
some little like, it's like amateur video, but it was kind of surreal seeing people walk through my room in China.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is cool. So
I like the topics that you're dealing with. They're kind of serious topics.
they
It's,
are.
when we tend to think about sound art, we don't tend to think about heavy, heavy subject matters, but you are dealing with some
Yeah.
heavy subject matters.
Yeah.
This is good. This is the power of what you're doing and what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
We want people to not just hear pop music or what's expected, like jazz in Harlem. We want people to, kind of experience something a little different so that they can appreciate their surroundings, because it's not just about nature, it's about your urban surroundings. And is that what you hope for when you create these works?
Yes, because having lived in New York now most of my life, I just feel it's very important. I think people had a greater appreciation of Central Park
Mm.
after the pandemic, and I just think that people have to appreciate what we have here.
Mm-hmm.
We have a very unique environment, and I'm very attuned to the nature in the urban environment and how we treat it. And it's important. There actually are ecosystems in urban environments,
Oh,
and
yeah.
and most people aren't aware of this though.
Mhm.
But when you see animals like I work on 125th Street, and they built a new complex there, and I saw some birds right in the new building perching.
Mhm.
They found that little piece of, you know, park land.
Mhm.
And I just think there's just something about that, about nature, about coexisting in urban environments. So I think that's kind of one of the focuses of my work. And I feel it's important for us to be diverse and to allow for different voices and different views, and not to, I just like to put stuff out there, and I don't like take a point of view other than this is what I've observed.
Right.
But you don't have to observe that at all. You
Right.
could take something totally different, because to me, I think art should just get you to think,
Yeah.
and maybe to care a little, and maybe to support institutions. I'm a big proponent of supporting institutions and giving back. Whatever institutions support me, I want to support.
Well, I just want to say, Deborah, thank you so very, very much for coming into the studio with us today and sharing everything that you did, because I learned a lot. just today. I learned more than I thought I knew about your practice, about sound art, how important it is. So, again, thank you so very, very much for coming into this studio.
Thank you, Savannah. It's been a pleasure.
Okay.